Hi there, welcome back to another video. Today I'm so excited because I'm gonna be sharing some DIY gift ideas with you. These DIYs are super affordable because I used mostly paper and cardboard to make these. So before we start, please consider subscribing if you haven't already and turn on the notifications. Now let's get started. For the first gift idea, I used a piece of cardboard. I cut these vintage photo frame shapes from paper and used them as a template to trace them on the cardboard. After tracing them, I cut the shapes out. Next, I took a piece of macrame cord and cut one end at a slight angle to blend it seamlessly into the frame. I began gluing the macrame cord around the edges of the photo frame to conceal the uneven edges of the cardboard and add character to the frame. Be sure to apply a very thin line of glue to prevent extra glue from seeping out. After trimming the excess cord, I also glued the macrame cord onto the interior edges of the frame. Once I finished wrapping the cord around the edges of the first frame, I repeated the process for the second frame. To embellish the frames, I used rhinestone stickers. I applied small dots of hot glue to the frame and adhered the rhinestones, spacing them evenly. I placed one rhinestone in the center and one at each corner on each side of the rectangular frame. For the oval frame, I glued 4 rhinestones to divide it into 4 equal sections. Next, I added 1 rhinestone between each pair of the initial 4, placing them in the middle of each section. For the base coat, I painted the photo frames with a layer of black acrylic paint, ensuring it reached all the crevices, especially along the macrame cord borders. Once the paint was completely dry, I used a foam brush with a small amount of gold acrylic paint and dry brushed it over the black to create an antique finish. I didn't want to use too much gold paint on the brush. I wanted to apply it sparingly to achieve an antique brass finish on the photo frames. I could always add more layers to build up the intensity to my liking. After finishing the frames, I cut out rectangular and oval shapes from thin cardboard to serve as the frame's backing. Then I selected 2 of these beautiful scrapbook paper pieces. Using a glue stick, I adhered the decorative paper pieces to the cardboard backing. Then I went ahead and trimmed the excess paper along the edges. I used hot glue to stick the backings to their respective frames. For the finishing touches, I took 2 seashells and painted their edges gold with acrylic paint. I used hot glue to secure the seashells in the center of the frames. I held them in place for a few seconds until the hot glue had dried. Finally, I glued 2 button magnets to the back of each photo frame. And there you have it, our first gift idea: DIY vintage frame fridge magnets with seashells. For the next DIY gift, I created a template for a tiny box on a piece of brown cardstock, and here are the measurements. I cut it out with scissors and used a ruler to make creases along the pencil lines. I folded all the creases inward like this. This section will be the top flap of the box. Using my ruler, I marked a 0.8 cm border along the edges of the top flap, then cut away the center part. After that, I erased all the pencil markings. I cut a square piece from a plastic fruit container to fit the top flap, then attached it with glue stick. Next, I drew tiny hearts all over the surface of the box with a pink marker. To assemble the box, I glued the edges of the side pieces and then attached the 2 large flaps at the bottom. I ensured that all the edges lined up perfectly. Now that the top side flaps were visible when I closed the box, I needed to trim them a little further. So I drew necessary markings and trimmed away the extra width. This completed the box, and I had planned to make a tiny cake-shaped jewelry box to put inside the brown box. For that, I took a piece of cardboard roll and made several 2.5 cm markings from one end all around the roll. I connected the markings with masking tape and then cut out a 2.5 cm long cylindrical section from the roll. I placed this on a piece of cardstock and traced a circle, then cut out the circle with scissors. I applied glue to one edge of the roll and attached the circle cutout. Next, I cut a 2 cm wide strip of cardstock and drew a horizontal line down the center, dividing the strip into 2 equal halves. I made several cuts along the bottom half of the strip like this. Using a ruler as a guide, I folded the cut segments inward. Then I wrapped the strip around the top edge of the cylindrical box and glued the ends, ensuring it fit snugly. I took another circle cutout and pasted it on top, forming the lid of our cake-shaped box. To give it a better finish, I pasted another circle under the lid to hide the cut segments. With the base ready, it was time to add icing to the cake. I carefully started applying hot glue around the edges of the lid. To create the icing drip effect, I added small blobs of glue and let them naturally drip down the sides. I varied the length and spacing of the drips for a more realistic look, working my way around the lid until I was happy with the coverage. Next, I applied a thin line of hot glue around the bottom of the box, giving the icing effect a cohesive finish. After the hot glue had cured, I painted the box with pastel pink acrylic paint. I used 2 to 3 layers of paint until it appeared completely opaque. I also painted the interior of the box. Then I mixed a small amount of the same pink paint with red to color the icing and painted over the areas with hot glue. Again, I applied 2 to 3 layers, allowing sufficient drying time between coats. Once the paint dried, I placed a pair of earrings and a tiny handwritten note inside the cake jewelry box. Finally, I put the box inside the brown cake box we had previously made, completing our DIY cake jewelry box, which makes an adorable birthday gift. For the final DIY gift idea, I cut two 3.5cm pieces from a cardboard roll. Next, I took a piece of rectangular cardboard, applied hot glue to the bottom edge of one of the cylindrical pieces and attached it to the cardboard base. I trimmed any excess cardboard around the edges. I repeated these steps, creating 2 cardboard flower planters. To wrap them, I used a piece of burlap ribbon. I applied some hot glue to the cardboard and attached one end of the ribbon to secure it. Then I continued wrapping the burlap around the rest of the cardboard pot. When I got near the end, I trimmed the excess ribbon and secured the remaining part with more glue. Next, I went ahead and trimmed the frayed edges at the top. I grabbed an empty egg box and cut out all these pyramid-shaped sections. I planned to make flowers and a succulent from these. Using a pencil, I sketched a petal shape on the flared end of each pyramid section and repeated this on the adjacent side. I trimmed the excess to create a flower shape. I made 5 flowers and used earbuds for the stems. I pushed one end of each earbud into the back of the flower and sealed it with hot glue to secure the stem. The cotton end of the earbud served as the flower center, and I made sure it was properly aligned. Then I bent the petals slightly outwards. You can also use a pencil to curl them. Next, I snapped off the other cotton ends of the earbuds. For painting the flowers, I used 5 different pastel acrylic colors. I wanted the flowers to look colorful and aesthetic, so I chose these beautiful pastel shades. I made sure the paint covered all the crevices since the flowers had a textured surface. To paint the center of the flowers, I mixed a coral shade. Then I painted the stems with light green acrylic paint. Once the paint dried, I arranged the flowers in one of the cardboard planters we had previously made. For the other planter, I decided to make a succulent. I started with a pyramid shape and drew leaf shapes on the flared ends. Then I cut out the excess to create the base layer of the succulent. I cut another piece slightly smaller than the first and used it for the middle layer. The smallest piece was for the top layer. I glued the layers together, stacking them in descending order to build the succulent. If you want to make it more dense, you can also glue a few extra leaves like I did. After the succulent was done, I cut a flat piece off the egg box lid. I planned to use this rough surface as the soil. I traced a circle with the planter, cut it out and trimmed the edges slightly so it fits snugly inside the planter. I crumpled a paper napkin, added hot glue inside the planter and filled it with the paper. I crumpled another napkin and repeated the process. Then I glued the circular piece on top. For painting the succulent, I made a light green acrylic paint and applied it as the base coat. Next, I darkened the green paint and applied it to the outer third of all the succulent leaves. Using a clean damp brush, I smoothed the edges to blend the darker green into the lighter green seamlessly. For the final touches, I added some red to the dark green paint and painted the tips of all the leaves. I painted the soil with dark brown acrylic paint. To finish, I added a dab of hot glue to the center of the soil and attached the succulent. This completed our DIY egg box succulent and flowers. I hope you liked all these DIY gift ideas. If you plan to recreate any of these DIYs, please tag me on Instagram at DustyHeels. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys next time.